The agenda is pretty straightforward. I got stuff to show you. Again, these are little things that you may be aware of or maybe don't know about that you can use. Just make your job simpler. Over the course of our product development, go back. There we go. We continue to improve the user experience, so trying to make it more intuitive using Viewer, streamlining things. So instead of doing 3-4 clicks, you can do it in 1 or 2 clicks, things like that. The other thing that we've been doing over the last few releases, in addition to some major enhancements, is moving what I would call moving stuff or functionality out of the View Explorer. If you've been with us for years, you know, the View Explorer over on the window on the right-hand side of the screen gives you everything you wanted to know about a view. It contains all the information, whether it's dimensions or measures or whatever. It's all over there. But what we've tried to do over the course of the last few releases is start to move stuff out of the View Explorer and put it into the main desktop, if you will. And where it says Move Intuitive, that should be more intuitive. Because what we found in a couple areas, one, I talked about kind of reducing the keystroke to do what you want to do. The other is we found as we do user reviews out in our customer base, that View Explorer can be intimidating to some folks. If the user isn't someone who's in Viewer all the time, day in, day out, you know, that View Explorer trying to find what you want to change, maybe in a measure or do sorting or whatever, can be intimidating. So we've started to bring things back, like I said, out into the toolbar, onto the desktop. And some of the things that we've done in that regard are a result of what our work we've been doing to improve the mobile experience. So if you're using Viewer on a tablet, bringing things out of the View Explorer makes it just so much easier to navigate, among other things. All right, so we're quickly going to go over to the demo environment. Again, this is version 7.0. So again, sometime in the spring we'll be releasing that. So let's just dive right into it. I'm going to open up a view. So over in the view, the left panel, I've got a view here. One of the things that we've done is provide different ways that you can get to editing measures. I'm going to expand the screen a little bit here. So one of the things that you can do is simply double-click on a column heading, and that'll get you right to the measures. Now, depending on the type of measure that's in that column, in this particular case it was a regular measure, so that's a measure that's stored in the database. If it's a regular measure column, it'll bring up the Edit Measure Item window, which shows you all of the regular measures that are defined within that view. Okay, so by doing that, I don't have to do right-click, edit to get there, and I certainly don't need to go into the View Explorer to do that. Again, I can. One of the things that as we add these new enhancements, this new way of doing things, we leave the old ways there. You know, so if you're more comfortable being in the View Explorer, that's fine as well. One of the things, again, is you double-click on a column heading. In this case, a regular column. There we go. Keep in mind, and I'm sure you all know this already, you can highlight multiple measures here. within the edit measure window. And anything down in the bottom that's in common, so in this case for all three of these, the thing that's in common is the time frame, the from and the to. So I can go in and I can change those. And those will apply to everything as I do an update. Okay. Go ahead and apply that change. That's fine. If I double click on a calculated measure, so the ASP is a calculated measure, I'm going to double click on that. There we go. It's going to bring up just that particular calculated measure, which makes sense because that calculation could be different from other ones as well. Okay? So that's just double clicking on the column heading. The icon that we added in version 6.8 up here, the 1, 2, 3, that deals with measures. And the one thing I just want to make sure everybody realizes is that the text over here, pick what to do with your data, add, edit, that kind of thing. These are hyperlinks. So these are active links. I can just click on here and get to the measure window. Or if I know I just want to add a regular measure, I can go right there. Okay, so a lot of the things that we're doing up on the toolbar with the icons, we're making those more dynamic, more interactive as well. Okay, talking about calculated measures again. So in 6.8, as I mentioned, we added the measure edit window. This shows you all of the measures that you have defined in your view. If you happen to have hidden measures, in this case I don't, but down here I can also include those in my list. So when we talk about calculated measures, one of the things that you can do, actually with any of these, is you can hide or display them. I can edit this particular measure, and then I can also do a copy. So in this case, what I want to show you is going to copy this ASP measure. On the calculated measure screen, what we added also in 6.8 was the ability to put in the caption right from the screen. And also on the right-hand side, the format, if I wanted to change the format for whatever reason. What do we got? We'll just do it there. Okay. But what I also wanted to show you within this menu, or this window, is the ability, if you have a calculated expression here, and maybe it's a bit complicated, one of the things that you can do without going in and changing the measure that I want to do the calculation with. So right now I've got sales divided by units. Classic SAP, or ASP, sorry. Maybe I want to change that to be list price divided by units. Well, I can go in here and I can click on this. It'll jump over here, and as we all know, anything that you click over here goes to the end of the string on the right-hand side. I can then copy and paste it from there and replace what I've got for my actual sales or data one. The other thing I can do is I can go into the calculation itself and simply replace the name of that particular measure that I want to replace. So in this case, I want to switch it from data 1, which is the actual sales amount. I want to switch it over to data 4. All I have to do is change that. So again, if I've got a fairly long, complicated, complex expression, this is a nice, easy way to do that. I can go ahead and validate, and what you'll see is viewer will validate it. It says it's fine. Click out of here. I come back here. Now the data 4 has changed. The description hasn't changed. That's okay, because now as I go and say OK, now I've got my ASP2. Go ahead and click OK. And now if I go back into this, you'll see it's changed. So again, I don't necessarily need to go in and change the data for actual sales sales amount over to extended list price. Just a nice, quick, easy way of doing that. All right. I'm going to cancel out of that. The other thing that you may or may not use today is just moving columns around. You know, classic from day one. You could do it over here in the View Explorer. I want to move that list price to be the first measure that I see in my list. The other thing that you can do is you can drag and drop it from the grid itself. So just highlight the column that you want, left mouse click, and drag that over. You can do it just right on the grid itself. As another option, from the Edit Measure window, you can do that as well. I can move things around. So a lot of options on moving columns around. Okay. Close the View Explorer here. One of the things that we added, again, version 6.8, a lot of new enhancements from a user perspective, was the navigation panel. And the navigation panel is this set of rows here. The rows, the columns, and the view filter. And it shows you what you have not only in your view. So if I were to open up the View Explorer again, I've got those 3 dimensions on my rows. I don't have anything on my columns. And it shows you what you've got highlighted so far in your grid. But over in order to add new dimensions, well, there's a couple ways. You know, again, classic is to go over the View Explorer, highlight rows in this case, say Edit. It's going to bring up the dimension window, which allows me to pick and choose what I want. But I can also go over and utilize these plus signs. So at the rows, the columns, even the view filter, I can click on that. And it's going to give me a list of the dimensions or hierarchies that are not currently in my view. So again, I can go through here now and pick some other dimensions. And they should line up the way I selected them. So the last one that I select is going to be the first in that list. Okay. So I can do that on my rows. I can do that on my columns. Again, I can do it from the View Explorer. I can do it from here. Now, the one disadvantage, if there's a disadvantage, is between the 2 ways of doing it. From the navigation panel, I don't have any sort capability. So maybe I've got a bunch of dimensions, and I just want those dimensions or hierarchies that pertain to product, for example. Yeah, I've got to just visually look through the list to get those, as opposed to, again, the classic way. I can do something up here in the Edit Rows window to search by that. So here are all the guys or all the dimensions that pertain or have product in their name. If I were to start a new view, again, the classic way is to right-click anywhere, say Edit, because we all know that that means to add dimensions. And I can go to my dimension window selection screen. But even on a new view, I can utilize these plus signs on the rows, columns, and the filters. So just a nice, easy way to quickly create a view. The navigation panel, let's go back to that existing view. Navigation panel is an option over in user options, whether or not you want to see that. If it happens to be turned off, to toggle that on and off, use the drop pin navigation panel. The other nice thing about the navigation panel is if I'm using charts. So as an example, I have a chart here, a view with a chart. And it's simply showing a pie chart. And we're able, within a chart, to drill down into a chart. So right now I'm looking at, well, I've got a filtered product brand, and I happen to be showing customer sold tos. I can click on any of these and drill down to the ship to level. So now I've got, well, evenly distributed there. I've got my ship tos for Wilder Foods. One of the drawbacks when you're drilling before the navigation panel came up was you didn't have a way to drill back up. So maybe I'm done looking at Wilder Foods. Now I want to drill to a different sold to customer. Real tough to do that unless you started and redisplayed the view / chart. But what you can do now is you can use the navigation panel to do that. So since it's not being displayed, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And now it shows me all of the dimensions that I have in my drill down path for rows. So now I can go back up and I just click on this. And it gets me back up to that higher level. And maybe now I want to go to Midwest providers. And I can even click down. I think this goes down to product family. Again, I can use the navigation panel to drill up and down within a chart. Okay, adding attributes. Let's go to a different view here. Apparently back to my favorite view. So an attribute is descriptive information about a dimension. So it can be the short and long description that comes with the dimension. But it can also be other attributes, or what we commonly call pickup fields, things like city, state, ABC classification for a product, whatever. It used to be that you did that. You added, let's say I wanted to add a attribute to the customer sold to field. You did that through the View Explorer. Right-clicking on here and do edit. Well, now I can do that anywhere. I can right-click and say add and attribute relationships. Those are my pickup fields. I can add those as I desire. I can also do that within the navigation panel. So maybe I know I'm going to go to sold to and, well, let's see where the navigation panel takes me, to product. I can right-click on that as well. So I can do it up here in the navigation panel, even though that particular dimension isn't being displayed at this time. So I can do my add my relationships. We'll add ABC class. So now as I drill, that's also going to be included. Just an easy way to get to that. As it pertains to attributes and time dimensions, view 2. Keep in mind that if you have a view that has time as a dimension, one of the things that we automatically include in the time dimension are attributes related to things like the start date of that particular, in this case, months. You know, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be quarters, whatever. You could have the start and the end date. There's a number of different attributes, if I right-click on months in this case, that we automatically generate for you. So there's a sequence number, in this case a year, because it's in this particular case, the time dimension that I'm using is a year month. So at the high level it's year. As you drill into the year, you go down to the months, and that's what we're displaying here. So this is just really handy from a user perspective, being able to show, in this case, this is fiscal months. So I've got different ending and starting and ending time periods as well. And if you were to filter on this, one of the things you can't do with these attributes is I can't filter on these. So if I right-click on that particular attribute, there's no filter. However, if I click on its corresponding dimension, I can do the filter. And just as a function of any time I filter on a dimension and I've got attributes being displayed for that dimension, I can then filter any of these different attributes. So maybe I only want to look at the member path. So again, I started with a year, month. So year comes first. So I can simply filter on that and just get those months. And then I can pick and choose which ones I actually want to filter on. So a nice way to be able to filter, but do it based on some of the attributes as well. All right. Let's go over to a different view. And let's talk about, again, the filter window. One of the things, if I were to filter on product in this case, one of the things you can notice, and these windows are now, you can move them around, any attribute that's currently being displayed in the grid for that particular dimension that you're filtering on is going to show up in the filter window. Okay, so in this case, I've got my product or my code and the long description. I'm going to just go ahead and find everything here. A couple things. If you want to filter or even just see other attributes about that particular dimension, down in here, click on More, and that's under Display Options. And what that will do now is bring up all of the attributes that are available for that particular dimension. I can click on other ones as well. Let's click on a couple there. And now those are going to be displayed in the window up at the top. And now I can, I can always search on any of the attributes, whether they're being displayed or not. But now I've got them in my display window. And again, something it's not new. It's been around for a while, but people may or may not know about it. You can also sort on any of the fields that are in that window. Ascending, descending. And I can also move things around. So there's a lot of different things that you can do within the filter window, sorting of the information on that window. If you find that you're constantly adding some display options, different attributes that you want included, you can add those as a default for that particular dimension. The caution is that applies to everybody. So it's a global attribute, it's a global parameter. So that if I were to add effectivity date and ABC classification to always show up whenever I do a filter for product dimension, I can do that at a global level, but that's going to be for everybody. Okay. Okay, let's go over to another view, product sales. One of the things, again, it's some people, it's been around for a while. Some people use it. It's a little bit hidden, but that's being able to do a filter based on a list of members that you might have from an external source. So, for example, you might have a customer that calls in and says, you know, I need information about these particular products, and here's my list of products that I want that information on, or maybe a vendor or whatever. One of the things that you can do during the filter is, if I go down to Filter, Edit, and again, clicking on More, in this case, from the Advanced screen, but that's the paste functionality. I want to be able to paste an external list of values into my filter. So I happen to have a little note file here. This could be a notepad, it could be Excel, it could be Word, it could be whatever. It does need to be in this sequence. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And what I do is I just paste that into the window on the left-hand side. And then say Validate. And what that does is viewer just make sure that those are legitimate, in this case, product numbers. It'll highlight in red if something is not. In this case, I have all valid product numbers, and I can say OK. And so that gets added down to my filter list. And now go ahead and say OK. And I've got my filter. So again, just a very handy way of bringing in an external list of values that you might get from, again, a customer or a vendor, whatever. Okay. A couple more items, and then we'll open it up to questions. If I go back to product sales, one of the things, if you find that you're creating user lists a lot. If you're a view administrator or a security admin, within the admin utilities, we've always had the user list option. So that allows me to create a user list and use that in a filter. If you're an advanced user or a casual user, you don't necessarily have access to that option in the admin utilities. So one way to do that, to allow users to be able to create their own user lists, is a couple different ways of doing that. One is to set up what we call a user link. And I've got one set up here, user list for products. I'm going to go ahead and edit that just to show you how to set that up. And what a user link allows you to do is to access any web-based application. You could use it also to open up an Excel file or a Word document, a PowerPoint, whatever, that's accessible from viewer on your server or your network. But in this case, I'm showing the ability to call a function within viewer. So in this case, I've got my server name and my port, which is how you log into viewer. And then in this particular function, it's the user list window. And there's a bunch of options that allow you also to, in this case, open up that window to create a new user list at a specific dimension. So in this case, it's product. So if I click on this user link, I can then, it goes right to, in this case, the user list maintenance. It's already set up to handle the product dimension. It's also, as you can see, it opened up a different window. So maybe I've got something I want to copy from viewer. I've got a grid open of products, which I'll do in a minute, and copy it over into my user list. So let's go back to this guy. Maybe I want to take these, highlight these particular products. I'm going to do a Control-C, come back over to my user list, and down into members, I'm going to paste that. Validate. It's surprise, they're all valid. And then I've got my user list. I can go ahead and save that after I give it a name. So now if I wanted to use that user list in this particular view, I can go to filter, change the filter type, in this case to a user list. And there's the one I just created. Again, as as an aside, this arrow here over on the bottom right-hand side actually displays which values are in that particular user list. Okay. So again, a handy way of giving folks access to maintaining user lists. You can also go as far as setting up what we call a hyperlink. I'm going to open up the measures, and I'm going to display some hidden measures. So I have one called Access User List. Over here, the minus sign means it's, and the fact that it's grayed out means it's not being displayed, it's hidden. I'm going to go ahead and show that. And what we have here then is a way, again, to, from this particular view, I can highlight particular products in this case. Go ahead and right click. And I can click on this icon, which is a hyperlink in a view, again, to that user list maintenance screen. It opens it up. I can say another UL. Same thing I did before. And now I can save that. So again, if you find that you're creating a lot of user lists over time, this is one other approach that you can take to create those user lists. Look out of that. Okay, last but not least, favorite views. Again, I think it was 6.7, maybe 6.6. Pretty sure it was 6.7. We added favorite and recent views. Again, this allows me to identify views. I may have a long list of views that are my favorite. I run them every day, so I want a handy way of finding them. And then on the right-hand side are the views, I think up to 25 that you've run recently. I can make a view a favorite by clicking over here. And I can just say add that to my favorites list. The other thing I can do is if I run a view, that's what this star is all about. If I click on that, that makes that view a favorite. All I have to do is toggle that on and off. Toggle it on to make it a favorite. I don't have to save the view. I can just toggle it. So if I go back to the home page now, go back to my favorites, it too is a favorite.